Right. Good morning and good day. Thank you everyone who's joining and watching this video. This is the 2023 Portland celebration of Open Data Day. And now we have Denise Whitney Dahlke. She is the Chief Data Steward at the Data Solutions Office of the Oregon Department of Transportation. And Denise has spent nearly 20 years as a data user and derived data creator and economist before pivoting to help Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT, develop an agency-level perspective on data and mature East data practices, right? She is currently ODOT's Chief Data Steward and is focused on data governance, strategy, literacy, open data, and helping to establish the agency's new Data Solutions Office. Denise also leads a work group developing Oregon's state's data literacy framework, is the vice chair of the American Association of Highway and Transportation Officials Committee on Data Management and Analytics, and founded an online community of public sector data leaders, which I will share the link. Is going to be in the description of the video. I'm going to live attendees. I'm going to share in the chat. And with that, Denise, please.
Great. Let me just share my screen. Pull up the presentation. There we go. Can you see it? Can you all see it?
We can see it. We see the tabs up and down, but we see the presentation.
Okay, great. Okay. So what I wanted to share with you today are really kind of what's some of the framework about why we're doing an open data, I'm sorry, not an open data, but a data literacy framework at the state level. So let me just start with some context, right? As public sector organizations, the expectations are for us to have increased transparency, do more evidence-based decision-making, take data-informed actions, learn from what we're doing, collaborate more as data interoperability gets more important because really functions are starting to intersect a lot more frequently. We need to be able to respond to changes, both in terms of our organizational responsibilities, but also the context or the environment we're in, right? And to take advantage of technological and analytical advances. And in order to do any of that, right, we need a data literate staff, right? In addition, we have some contextual changes going on that are pretty important, right? So we have changes in organizational functions. For instance, Oregon Department of Transportation in particular has things like connected vehicle ecosystems to worry about, the road use charge program, right, which is an innovation, a range of new kinds of roles for us to take into account, but this is something that's happening for everyone, right? And where technologies are sort of changing how we gather, store, analyze, and redistribute data or information, right? Some of the times it's right at the site, as opposed to going into some sort of data center for distribution. And all of this means that we have an accelerating growth in the volume of data itself, but also the frequency of collection and the variety. So put simply, the challenges are only growing in size and not slowly. And so to meet these needs, public employees need the skill sets, right? And so as part of the Oregon data strategy, developing a data literacy framework and really helping to do this skill building as part of that broad approach that the state is trying to take. And the Oregon Data Literacy Work Group that I'm chairing is responsible for advising and assisting the Oregon Chief Data Officer and her advisory council in completing that task. So here's just a little peek of who's involved, and Hector's right there at the top of the list. And so you'll notice that it's not just state agencies that are involved, even though this is a state level effort, but we've also involved local governments, because our hope is, given how many of us are facing these needs, that other people people or others in our jurisdictional partners might choose to adopt this framework also, because nobody really wants to reinvent the wheel, right? So many of us are facing so many of the same issues around data management, data use, the need for skill building. So to the degree that this work that we're doing can help really move everyone forward more quickly, that's really the goal, right? So let's talk for a second about what we really mean about data literacy. This is a conversation that Hector was involved in really early on when we started looking at the framework. Are we talking about just understanding how to work with numbers? Are we talking about being able to create visualizations, being able to understand them? Are we talking about, being able to do statistical analysis or interpret statistics? Are we talking about just general information literacy, right? Knowing when it's needed, how to get it. Are we talking about related computational literacies, right? So are we talking about programming in R? Are we talking about SQL to generate reports? What do we really mean there, right? In addition, right, are we talking about data management skills, right? Knowing how to make sure that your data is of a quality that's appropriate for use and really collected and then provided for users. Are we talking about things that we're associating with data science now, like machine learning? Are we talking about data architecture and engineering, right? The data pipelines to really help create data access and do good optimization, integration, the kinds of things that when we think about greater collaboration and interoperability become really key. And with changes in technology, the mechanisms for those data pipelines keep shifting, right, too. What about media literacy? So, I mean, how you define data, if you're thinking about unstructured or semi-structured data in addition to tabular data, are you including media literacy? And what about ethics, right? So the data literacy work group really decided to embrace sort of all of these. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit about kind of what a framework includes. So typically a data literacy framework includes kind of a set of competencies that you're looking at, being able to do some of the things that I just discussed, a level of proficiency, right? What's your skill set around that particular competency, but having them focused around specific roles, right? People who need similar skill sets, because Hector may have a role in his organization that pulls from a range of different skill sets that may be from different groupings, and I might want to do that a little differently. So we want to create something that is flexible. So the way to think about personas or roles is that it's not tied to a single job, which could change from place to place, but it's really something where you could hold multiple roles. And this allows us to build kind of layers as we start to describe jobs themselves. So I'll give you some examples just to kind of help cement it for you. This is an example of some data literacy personas, almost archetypes really, right? So sponsors versus analysts and data scientists versus the architecture and engineering side we were talking about earlier, or really other ambassadors, right? And so one of the things that comes up a lot when I have conversations about data literacy, whether it's with other national, state departments of transportation, or through, we have a data governance community of practice that includes a jurisdictional level people as well. One of the things that we talk about a lot is that in order for us to get to good data-driven decision making, right, even our leaders have to have a foundational level of data literacy. And we're all contributing to agency data or organizational data or really national data, right? Whether it's through timesheets or apps on our phone, right? We're all contributing to data too. So what are some of the foundational needs that we all need to have around data literacy? And then as we think about kind of competencies and what are those skill sets, right? Thinking about it from a data lifecycle perspective sort of helps us as we're trying to be more comprehensive, right? And think through the range of skills that are needed. So here's a competency set example that's based on kind of the data lifecycle, right? But you start to get a sense for how these roles might align to some of these skill sets, right? Do you know what data is available, what different types of formats there are? How good are you at finding data? What about actually doing the data collection, right? The up close and personal, actually pulling it into organizations. What about data cleaning, data modeling, visualization, interpretation, storytelling is so crucial these days, right? All of these things are really important skill sets. And so the framework will include some sort of competency set and then we'll apply it to the personas that we select. And then we'll really describe for each of those personas and competencies what level of proficiency different people might need to have. Is it good enough just to have sort of a foundational understanding? Or are they going to be a data leader for your organization and maybe a data architect with a whole agency perspective, and they need a much more advanced proficiency level? So the framework will try to kind of marry all three of those components together. So here's kind of what's coming up next. Once the framework is in place, then we'll do some listening sessions to get focused input from specific types of stakeholders, right? Primarily, again, this is expected to be something that supports state agencies, but we're also hoping that there'll be other potential jurisdictional adopters. We also hope that our education community really embraces what we've identified as state agency needs and helps to put some of that learning in place. There are, of course, some programs already, but not necessarily everything that we think we're going to need. And then, of course, outreach to community-based organizations. So after we get that input, we'll do some refinement, and then the framework will actually go out for a broader public comment period, much like the Oregon Data Strategy did. So that's a really quick view of where we're going, and I'm happy to take any questions.